She arrived at the ranch just before sunrise, tired from travel and heavy thoughts. The land stretched wide and quiet with dry grass moving slowly in the morning wind. She stood at the gate with a small bag and no clear plan other than to survive. Another day her past had taught her that asking too many questions only brought trouble, so she waited and watched. The ranch was already awake. Men moved with purpose, horses were saddled and tools were lifted from old sheds no one greeted her at. First then, the foreman noticed her. He was a tall man with a loud voice and eyes that measured people like tools. He asked where she came from and why she was there. She answered softly, saying she was looking for work. Any work, he nodded and told her she could stay if she worked hard and followed orders. She did not know then that those words would shape her days. The work began before the sun climbed high. She cleaned stalls, hauled water, and cooked meals. Her hands grew sore and cracked within. The days she was given the hardest tasks, while others rested. When she asked about pay, the foreman waved her away, saying, "Later, always later." She learned quickly that later never came. At night she slept in a small room near the barn. The walls were thin, and the air was cold. She wrapped herself in an old blanket and stared at the ceiling, thinking about the life she left behind. She had run from a place where promises were broken and voices were raised. Too many nights filled with fear had pushed her onto the road. She thought this ranch would be different. She was wrong. The foreman watched her closely. He spoke to her in ways that made her uneasy. He stood too close and reminded her she owed him for food and shelter. He told her she should be grateful because no one else would take her in. She believed him because fear has a way of sounding like truth. The other workers noticed what was happening but said nothing. They needed their jobs, and silence felt safer than justice some avoided. Her others looked at the ground. When the foreman raised his voice, she felt alone. Even when surrounded by people, one man was different. He was a cowboy who worked the outer fields. He spoke little and listened more. He noticed how she limped at the end of the day and how her eyes stayed low. When the foreman appeared, he saw her skip meals and give her portion away, claiming she was not hungry. He saw more than he said. The cowboy had lived on ranches his whole life. He knew the signs of power. Used the wrong way, he remembered his own past. When someone had once stood up for him, that memory stayed with him like a quiet fire. He did not rush. He waited and watched, just as he had learned long ago. Days turned into weeks. The work grew heavier. The foreman grew bolder. He demanded more hours and offered less kindness. She began to feel trapped. The gate that once looked open now felt like a wall. She wondered if freedom was only for other people. One afternoon, the heat was strong and her strength was gone. She dropped a bucket by accident. The foreman shouted, his voice cutting through the air. He blamed her for wasting time and threatened to send her away with nothing. She apologized again and again, even though she had done nothing wrong. The cowboy stood nearby holding his reins. He said nothing, but his eyes met hers for a moment. In that look, she felt something she had not felt in a long time. Someone saw her. Someone knew this small moment gave her enough strength to stand back up. That night she cried quietly so no one would hear. She thought about leaving but had nowhere to go. The road outside the ranch felt just as dangerous as staying. She whispered a promise to herself that she would survive one more day, just one more. The ranch slept under the stars, unaware that change was already taking root. The woman did not know it yet, but her suffering had been seen. And the cowboy who watched from a distance was not the kind of man who forgot what he saw. The days passed slowly on the ranch. The young woman learned how to move quickly and quietly, how to avoid the foreman's sharp words, and how to keep her head down. The work never stopped, and the hours felt endless. She carried water and feed from dawn until dusk. Her muscles ached and her hands bled, yet she continued because she had no other choice. The foreman watched her closely. He smiled when she struggled and scolded when she rested. He reminded her constantly that she was lucky to have a place to sleep and food to eat. She felt trapped in a cage made of fear and obligation. She wondered if anyone else had noticed how unfair the work was. The other workers continued to stay silent. Most avoided her eyes. Some whispered when she passed, but never to her face. They needed the foreman and feared what would happen if they spoke up. She learned to trust no one except the cowboy who worked the fields away from the barn. The cowboy noticed everything. He watched the foreman take advantage of her, and he saw how she tried to hide her pain from everyone else. He watched her skip meals and pretend she was not hurt when the work was too hard. He remembered times in his own life when he had felt powerless and he could not ignore what he saw. One evening he walked past her while she cleaned the barn. She looked up for a moment, and he nodded quietly. She nodded back, and for a second the world felt a little less heavy. That small moment of recognition gave her courage, even though she did not know how to act on it. Yet the foreman became more daring each day. He found new ways to make her fear him more. He criticized her in front of others. He gave her impossible tasks and blamed her for mistakes that were not hers. She started to feel that no one would ever help her, that the world outside the ranch was just as cruel. The cowboy continued to watch. He spoke to no one and kept his distance, but he was patient. He understood that acting too quickly could make things worse. He waited for a moment when he could intervene safely, when he saw the fear in her eyes, felt a growing need to protect her, to stop the injustice that had become her life. One afternoon the sun burned bright, and the work was exhausting. He dropped a heavy sack of feed by accident. The foreman shouted at her and slapped the sack as if it were her fault. Her hands were raw and she felt tears forming, but she swallowed them down quickly. She was used to pain and fear, and she believed she had to endure it alone. The cowboy saw the whole thing. He walked up to the foreman quietly and placed a hand on his shoulder. He whispered something the woman could not hear. The foreman frowned but did not shout. He walked away, and the woman noticed a change in the way he treated her. For a brief moment, the fear in her chest loosened slightly. That night she lay awake thinking about the cowboy and the brief relief he had given her. She realized that she was not invisible, that someone saw her, suffering, and wanted to help. She felt a small spark of hope that had been missing since she arrived. The days continued in the same rhythm. Work came early and ended late. The foreman still demanded and criticized, but the woman began to notice small signs of change. The cowboy would pass by and leave her a drink of water or a piece of bread. He would stand nearby while she worked, and his presence reminded her she was not alone. The quiet moments mattered, the look of understanding in his eyes, the small gestures that said he was there. They gave her strength. She began to believe that one day she could stand for herself, that the fear that had held her for so long could be replaced by courage. The ranch seemed unchanged to others, but for her the world was shifting. She noticed the wind felt different and the sun shone a little warmer. The stars at night seemed brighter, and the silence of the fields no longer felt empty. She felt the first taste of freedom she had ever known. The foreman continued to be cruel, but she felt stronger. She knew that she would survive each day, and that someone would stand with her if needed. The cowboy remained her quiet protector, and with him nearby, the world felt slightly less dangerous. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew that for the first time in a long time, she could face it without being completely alone. The foreman became more reckless. As time passed, his words were sharp, and his demands grew heavier. He pushed the young woman to her limits. She worked from the first light of morning until the last glow of sunset. Her hands were sore and her back ached. Her mind was tired, and her spirit felt crushed. One day he asked her to carry water from the distant well. She struggled with the heavy buckets. He laughed at her weakness and shouted insults. The other workers watched, but said nothing. The woman felt trapped in a world where fear controlled everything. The cowboy was nearby. He had noticed the foreman's growing cruelty. He had waited for the right time to act. He watched the young woman stumble under the weight of the water and felt a strong need to step in. He walked toward her calmly, his presence alone giving her a moment of relief. The foreman saw him coming and shouted, but the cowboy did not stop. He spoke softly to the woman, telling her to put down the buckets. She obeyed and felt her body relax for the first time that day. The cowboy turned to the foreman and said something firm. His voice carried authority, the kind that comes from quiet strength. The foreman froze for a moment, surprised that someone dared to speak. The other workers watched closely. The foreman tried to assert control, but the cowboy did not back down. He spoke of fairness, of respect, of right and wrong. The foreman became angry, but the words of the cowboy had touched something in the hearts of the workers. They began to whisper to each other, sharing their fears and thoughts quietly. The young woman felt a spark of courage rise inside her. She had seen someone stand up for her. She had felt support when she believed she was alone. She realized that silence could be broken, that fear could be faced. She looked at the cowboy and nodded silently, feeling grateful for his quiet bravery. The foreman tried to regain control. He shouted insults and demanded obedience, but his power was weakening. The workers began to speak up. Little by little, they shared how the foreman had treated them, how he had used fear to rule them, how long they had endured in silence. The young woman listened, feeling a growing sense of belonging. Days passed and the atmosphere on the ranch started to change. The foreman was still there, but his holdover. Everyone was slipping. He still tried to assert power, but the workers no longer feared him in the same way. The young woman continued to work hard, but she felt less burdened by fear. She had support. She was no longer completely alone. The cowboy remained near her. He offered quiet guidance and small acts of kindness. He reminded her of her strength and gave her moments to rest without judgment. He never pushed her. He never demanded anything in return. His presence was steady and comforting. One evening, the foreman crossed a line he had not crossed before. He raised his voice and threatened the young woman in front of everyone. The cowboy stepped forward without hesitation. He stood between them, speaking firmly and calmly. The foreman was shocked that someone dared to challenge him. He hesitated, unsure of what to do next. The workers saw this and felt courage grow within them. They had suffered silently for too long. They began to speak openly about the unfair treatment the foreman had given them. The young woman listened and felt a deep sense of relief and hope. It was the first time she realized that standing together could change things. Foreman finally left the room fuming, but the impact of that day could not be erased. The young woman felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She realized that fear could be faced and that one act of courage could inspire many. She looked at the cowboy and felt gratitude, not just for protection, but for showing her the power of standing up. That night she slept with a lighter heart. She thought about the events of the day and felt a spark of hope for the future. She knew that life on the ranch would continue to be hard, but she also knew that change was possible and that freedom could come from courage and support. The days after the confrontation felt different on the ranch. The foreman still lingered, but his presence was less threatening. The young woman felt a growing sense of strength in herself. She continued her work, but no longer with the same fear that had weighed her down before. The cowboy remained nearby, his quiet presence a reminder that she was not alone. She noticed small changes in the other workers. They began to help her more and speak up for themselves. They shared their stories and encouraged each other in small ways. The ranch began to feel like a place where courage could grow and fear could be challenged. Even the animals seemed calmer as the tension in the air eased. The cowboy continued to watch and support. Her confidence grew slowly. She learned that strength did not mean fighting alone, but accepting help when it was offered. She took small steps each day, carrying out her work with careful pride. She learned to speak calmly to the foreman when necessary, and to stand firm in ways she never had before. One morning, the foreman tried to manipulate the workers into following his orders without question. He shouted and pointed fingers, but the workers had begun to trust each other. They supported one another and refused to obey unfair commands. The young woman joined their voices, and for the first time, she felt the power of collective courage. She realized that together, they could face injustice and protect one another. The cowboy noticed the change and offered guidance when needed. He helped the young woman understand that freedom was not given, but earned through steady actions and choices. He showed her how to approach situations carefully, how to speak without anger, and how to remain strong. Even when others tried to intimidate, her days turned into weeks, and the young woman learned more about herself. She discovered a resilience she had not known existed. She could lift heavy loads without fear of failure. She could face the foreman and stand her ground without trembling. She began to trust her instincts and feel capable of making decisions for herself. The foreman grew frustrated as his control continued to slip. He tried to assert power, but the workers no longer feared him. In the same way, his voice no longer commanded attention, and his threats no longer carried weight. The young woman noticed how easily he could be ignored when the workers stood together. She felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that courage and unity had weakened the oppression she had endured. One evening, she and the cowboy walked near the edge of the fields. Sun was low, and the air felt soft and warm. He spoke quietly about choices and freedom, about learning to trust, and about finding strength. Within oneself, she listened carefully, feeling the truth of his words. Deep in her heart, she realized that she had already begun to build a new life. A life where fear no longer controlled her. The young woman took the lessons she had learned and applied them each day. She shared small acts of kindness with the other workers. She helped them carry loads when they were tired and encouraged them to speak up when the foreman tried to intimidate them. Her confidence inspired others, and slowly, the atmosphere of the ranch changed from one of fear to one of quiet strength and hope. She began to notice how much she had grown. She could work long hours and still maintain a sense of control over her own life. She could interact with the foreman without fear dominating her thoughts. She could look at the cowboy and feel gratitude, not just for his protection, but for showing her the path to courage. The days continued, and the young woman prepared to make decisions about her future. She realized that leaving the ranch was possible, that she could choose freedom on her own terms. She had learned how to stand firm, how to accept help, and how to protect herself. She no longer felt trapped in a world of fear. The cowboy remained near her, offering guidance, but never pressure. He understood that freedom was her choice, and that support could not replace the strength she had built within herself. He reminded her that courage was a daily practice, and that small steps each day could create a life she had never thought possible. The young woman began to dream of life beyond the ranch. She imagined places where she could work without fear, where she could make decisions for herself, where kindness was more common than cruelty. She held on to these dreams as she completed her daily work, her mind focused on hope and possibility. The foreman continued to linger, but the young woman felt no fear. He had lost the power to control her. She worked with care and dignity and encouraged others to do the same. The workers began to trust one another and to act with integrity. The ranch slowly transformed into a place where courage and respect were stronger than fear and oppression. At night, she rested with a sense of peace. She thought about the cowboy and the lessons he had taught her. She understood that freedom was not simply leaving a place, but learning to stand firm and trust oneself. She felt gratitude for the journey she had taken and the strength she had discovered in herself. And in the quiet support of another, the young woman woke early, feeling a sense of freedom. She had never known. She moved quietly through the ranch, completing her work with care and purpose. She no longer felt the weight of fear pressing down on her. Each day she grew stronger in her mind and body, in her courage and in her ability to stand for herself. The foreman still lingered, but his threats had little effect. Workers had learned to support one another and to act with integrity and quiet strength. The young woman joined them with a sense of pride. She knew that the changes had come not from anger, but from courage and patience, from steady acts of care and support. The cowboy remained near, offering guidance when needed. He reminded her that freedom was a choice and that it could be practiced each day. She learned to trust her instincts, to act with wisdom, and to seek help when necessary. She realized that the path to freedom was not always easy, but it was always possible when one believed in oneself. One afternoon, she walked near the edge of the fields, thinking about her future. She felt a calm certainty that she could leave the ranch if she chose to. She thought about all she had endured and all she had learned. She felt gratitude for the support she had received and for the courage she had discovered within herself. The other workers gathered around her. They spoke quietly about their experiences and shared encouragement and hope. The young woman realized that she was part of a community that valued strength and integrity. She felt connected and supported in ways she had never experienced before. She understood that courage was contagious, and that one person standing firm could inspire many. The foreman grew more frustrated as his control continued to diminish. He tried to assert authority, but the workers ignored his threats. They spoke calmly and firmly, standing together as a united group. The young woman felt a sense of empowerment, knowing that she had played a role in creating this change. She knew that fear could be replaced by courage when people supported each other. The cowboy offered quiet advice about planning for the future, about making choices that reflected her values, and about protecting her freedom. She listened and felt the truth of his words deep in her heart. She realized that freedom was not just leaving a place, but living each day with strength, courage, and integrity. She began to make preparations to leave the ranch. She gathered her belongings carefully and thought about where she would go. She felt a sense of excitement and anticipation. Mixed with a calm determination, she had faced fear and oppression, and she was ready to step into a life that she could shape with her own hands. Workers watched as she prepared. They expressed their gratitude for her courage and her kindness. They spoke of the changes she had inspired and the hope she had brought to the ranch. The young woman felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her presence had made a difference. Cowboy walked beside her as she made her final preparations. He reminded her that she had the strength to face whatever lay ahead, and that she could always carry the lessons she had learned with her. She nodded quietly, feeling a sense of peace and readiness. She understood that freedom was a gift she had, earned through courage and steady determination. The day she left the ranch, she walked with confidence. She felt the wind on her face and the warmth of the sun. She thought about the journey she had taken, about the fear she had faced, and the courage she had found. She felt gratitude for the support she had received and for the lessons she had learned along the way. As she moved toward her new life, she felt a sense of hope and possibility. She knew that challenges would come, but she also knew that she had the strength to face them. She carried the lessons of courage, patience, and integrity with her, and felt ready to create a life guided by her own choices and values. The ranch behind her had changed as well. The workers continued to act with courage and integrity. The foreman had lost his power, and the atmosphere had shifted from fear to respect. The young woman felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that her journey had created change, not just for herself, but for others as well. Cowboy watched her leave with a sense of quiet pride. He knew that he had not saved her, but had stood when it mattered. He understood that true freedom came from the courage to face fear and to stand for what was right. The young woman walked forward, carrying the lessons of the past and the hope for the future after. Leaving the ranch, the young woman felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She had never been on her own for so long, and the wide world before her felt both welcoming and unknown. She walked with careful steps, looking at the horizon, thinking about where to go and what to do. She remembered the lessons of courage and patience, the guidance of the cowboy, and the support of those who had stood with her. She found a small town where she could rest and gather her thoughts. The streets were busy and full of people moving with purpose. She observed quietly, learning how to navigate without fear. She found a place to sleep and work and began to plan each day with care. She had understood that freedom came with responsibility and that her actions would shape the life she wanted. Her work in the town was not easy. She had to adjust to new routines and expectations. She carried out tasks with dedication and learned quickly. From those around her, she discovered that her strength from the ranch had prepared her to face challenges with calm determination. She no longer doubted her ability to survive and thrive. She met people who treated her with respect and kindness. She shared stories of her past in small ways and listened to the stories of others. She began to understand the power of community and mutual support. She realized that courage was not only for facing cruelty, but also for seeking connection and trust with those around her every day. She practiced small acts of independence. She learned to manage her money, her time, and her decisions. She found joy in small achievements like completing a task on her own or helping someone else without being asked. She felt a growing sense of self-worth and confidence that came from knowing she could rely on herself. Memories of the ranch remained with her. The lessons of courage and integrity guided her. In interactions and choices she remembered the foreman and the fear he had caused, but she no longer felt powerless. Instead, she carried the understanding that courage could overcome oppression and that support could transform lives. She reflected on the cowboy who had shown her that standing firm could inspire others. She began to explore her dreams and ambitions. She thought about work that brought meaning and connection. She considered learning new skills and helping others who had faced difficulties. She felt that her experiences had given her insight and empathy that could make a difference. She began to plan steps toward goals that felt important and fulfilling. One afternoon, she helped a neighbor carry heavy supplies. She spoke kindly and encouragingly and noticed the gratitude in the neighbor's eyes. She realized that small acts of kindness and courage could ripple outward and impact more than one life. She remembered the support she had received on the ranch and understood that helping others strengthened her own sense of freedom. She faced moments of doubt and fear, but met them with the lessons learned from the ranch. She reminded herself that fear could be faced calmly, and that courage was strengthened. By experience and reflection, she knew that setbacks were part of life and that persistence was necessary to maintain freedom and growth. Over time, she built a routine that balanced work, rest, and learning. She created small goals each day and celebrated accomplishments. No matter how small, she felt pride in her ability to navigate the world with independence and respect for herself and others. She understood that life was a process of continuous growth and careful choice. She maintained a connection to the people who had supported her at the ranch through letters and occasional visits. She shared stories of progress and learned from their continued experiences. She realized that relationships built on trust, courage, and care were lasting and valuable. She carried gratitude for the lessons and support that had allowed her to step into freedom. Her confidence grew, and she began to take on more responsibilities. She participated in community events, helped organize work, and encouraged others to stand firm for what was right. She understood that freedom was not just personal but also communal, and that acting with integrity inspired others to do the same. She learned to navigate challenges without fear. She faced difficult tasks with calm determination and met conflicts with wisdom. Rather than anger, she discovered that strength was not about dominating others, but about standing firm with respect and fairness. She felt satisfaction in making choices guided by courage and integrity. The young woman reflected on the journey from the ranch to the present. She realized how far she had come and how much she had learned. She felt proud of her growth, her independence, and her ability to support and inspire others. She understood that freedom was a daily practice, and that living with courage and care created a life worth pursuing. She continued to plan for the future, setting goals that align with her values. She sought opportunities to grow, skills, help others, and contribute meaningfully to her community. She felt a deep sense of purpose and possibility and embraced the life she had built with quiet determination and careful thought. Each day became a chance to strengthen freedom, courage, and connection. She walked through the town with confidence, noticing the impact of her choices and actions. She realized that the lessons from the ranch had become part of who she was, shaping every decision, every interaction, and every inner dream. She carried hope for the future and the knowledge that she could face anything with courage and care. The young woman continued to live in the town, building a life that reflected the courage she had learned on the ranch. Each day, she faced new challenges, but met them with calm determination and clear thought. She took small steps toward personal growth, learning new skills and gaining confidence in her abilities. She understood that freedom was not a single moment, but a daily choice. She began to interact with more people in the community, sharing stories and listening carefully. She learned from the experiences of others and found ways to help where she could. Her empathy grew stronger, and she discovered that supporting others strengthened her own sense of independence and confidence. She realized that courage was not only about facing fear, but also about connecting and helping. Her work became more meaningful. She found tasks that challenged her mind and body and allowed her to contribute to the town. She organized small projects, helping neighbors and learning how to work with others effectively. She felt pride in each accomplishment and noticed how the small efforts created trust and respect among those around her. The memories of the ranch stayed with her. She remembered the foreman and the fear he had caused, but she no longer felt powerless. She recalled the cowboy and the lessons of quiet strength, patience, and support. She understood that courage could inspire others, and that acting with integrity could create change in unexpected ways. She carried these lessons in every action. She began to imagine new possibilities for her future, thinking about work she wanted to pursue and ways to continue helping others. She set goals that felt important and achievable. She practiced patience and steady effort, knowing that lasting change took time. She felt confident that each small step was moving her toward a meaningful life. Some days were difficult. She faced obstacles that tested her patience and skill. She reminded herself of the courage she had built on the ranch and the strength She had discovered on her journey she focused on solutions rather than problems, and learned to act calmly even. In stressful situations, her resilience grew stronger with each challenge. The young woman also discovered the importance of rest and reflection. She took time to think about her choices, her goals, and the impact of her actions. She noted moments of success and progress and used them to build confidence. She understood that freedom was supported by self-awareness and careful thought as much as by courage and action. She formed connections with people who shared her values. She found friends who encouraged honesty, integrity, and respect. She shared her experiences and offered guidance when she could. She noticed that when she acted with care and courage, she inspired others to do the same and felt satisfaction in contributing to a positive environment. She began to mentor younger people in the town, showing them how to face challenges and make decisions with thought and integrity. She shared practical advice from her own experiences and listened to their concerns. She realized that teaching others reinforced her own understanding and helped build a community of trust and courage. The young woman explored creative ways to express herself. She wrote down stories of courage and hope and shared them with people in her life. She found that putting words to experiences helped clarify her thoughts and strengthened her confidence. She discovered that storytelling could inspire others and create connection even across differences. She also focused on long-term goals planning for skills and education that would allow her to live independently and contribute meaningfully. She balanced work responsibilities with learning and reflection and found satisfaction in the steady progress. She understood that freedom was created through effort, consistency, and thoughtful decision-making. Her confidence and courage began to show in her interactions. She spoke calmly in difficult conversations and stood firm in her choices without fear of judgment. She noticed that people respected her for her integrity and for the way she treated them with fairness and care. She felt a deep satisfaction knowing that her actions were aligned with her values. She continued to reflect on the lessons of the ranch and the guidance of the cowboy. She understood that support from others was important, but that true freedom came from within. She used this understanding to guide her daily choices and to face challenges with courage and thoughtfulness. Young woman also found joy in simple moments, walking through the town, observing life around her, and taking time to appreciate the world. She noticed details she had once overlooked and felt gratitude for the small blessings in her daily life. She realized that happiness and courage could grow from attention and care in ordinary moments. Her life began to feel more stable and purposeful. She had faced fear, oppression, and uncertainty, and emerged with confidence and determination. She understood that freedom was a continuous journey of learning, courage, reflection, and careful action. She felt empowered to continue shaping her life and helping others along the way. Each day became a chance to practice independence, courage, and connection. She worked with intention, thought, and care. Learning from challenges and celebrating small successes, she understood that her past had prepared her to face the future with resilience, and that her actions could inspire change beyond herself. The young woman looked forward to each new day. With a sense of hope and readiness, she carried the lessons of courage, patience, integrity, and support in every step. She understood that the journey was ongoing and that each choice contributed to the life she wanted to create. She embraced her freedom with confidence and a sense of purpose and moved forward with quiet determination. The young woman woke to a soft light breaking through the window. She stretched her arms and felt a calm energy in her body. She thought about the life she had built since leaving the ranch, about the strength she had gained and the courage that guided her. She knew that today would be another opportunity to practice the lessons she had learned. And to move forward with intention and care. She prepared her small breakfast, carefully savoring each bite. She had learned to pay attention to the simple moments and to appreciate the effort and resources that went into each meal. She felt a sense of gratitude for the ability to choose what she ate when she rested and how she spent her time. She knew that freedom was reflected in these small daily choices. After finishing her meal, she planned her day. She had tasks to complete and goals to work toward, but she approached them with calm confidence. She listed the priorities she wanted to focus on and thought about how to carry out each task efficiently and effectively. She understood that planning and preparation were important parts of independence and personal growth. Her first task was to assist a neighbor with repairs on a small building. The work required attention and strength. She carried tools and materials carefully, making sure not to overstrain herself. She worked steadily and methodically, listening to the neighbor's instructions and offering her own suggestions when appropriate. She felt satisfaction in completing the work well and in contributing to the community. As she worked, she noticed details in the world around her: the wind moving through the trees, the sunlight on the rooftops, the sounds of birds and distant voices. She appreciated the beauty in ordinary moments and felt a sense of calm and connection. She understood that paying attention to the present allowed her to act more clearly and to make better decisions. After completing the task, she rested for a short time, reflecting on the work she had done, and the progress she had made gave her a sense of accomplishment. She drank water and allowed herself to feel the strength in her body. She reminded herself that care for oneself was as important as care for others, and that balancing effort with rest was part of a healthy life. She then moved to the next task of the day, which involved learning new skills. She had enrolled in a small local program to develop abilities that would help her work independently and expand her opportunities. She focused carefully, listening to the instructions, practicing the techniques, and asking questions when needed. She felt satisfaction in learning and in knowing that each new skill would contribute to her independence and confidence. Throughout the day, she also took moments to support others. She helped a young person carry a heavy load and offered encouragement when the task seemed difficult. She noticed how small acts of assistance could strengthen relationships and create trust. She remembered the lessons of the ranch and the importance of supporting others while maintaining her own boundaries and safety. During the afternoon, she spent time planning for her future. She considered different paths for work, education, and personal growth. She reflected on her values and thought carefully about choices that would align with her goals. She wrote down steps she could take to move closer to her objectives and felt confident in her ability to follow through. She also spent time thinking about community connections. She visited neighbors and shared stories and advice. She listened to the experiences of others and found ways to offer support. She realized that building relationships and trust was a key part of living freely and responsibly, and that her actions could have positive effects beyond herself. As the sun began to lower, she moved to a quiet area to reflect. She thought about the challenges she had faced and the strength she had gained. She remembered the fear and uncertainty of the ranch and the courage she had discovered through support and self-belief. She felt gratitude for the people who had guided her and for the lessons that had shaped her into the person she had become. She took time to write down her thoughts and feelings. This practice helped her organize her mind and understand her growth. She wrote about her journey from fear to courage, from dependence to independence. She reflected on how small steps each day had led to significant change and how consistent effort and care had transformed her life. In the evening, she engaged in activities that nourished her spirit. She read quietly and learned new ideas. She thought about ways to continue growing and contributing. She understood that freedom was not static, but a continuous process of learning and applying knowledge, courage, and compassion. She prepared a simple meal and took care in its preparation. She reflected on how far she had come from the days when even simple meals felt like privileges. She appreciated the choices she now had and the control she held over her life. She understood that independence involved responsibility and mindful action in every aspect of daily life. After dinner, she walked through the town, enjoying the calm of the evening. She observed interactions among people and noticed moments of kindness and cooperation. She thought about how small actions could influence a larger community and how courage and integrity could inspire change. She felt connected to the world around her and confident in her ability to contribute positively. She returned to her home. As the night settled, she took time to rest and reflect on the day. She appreciated the accomplishments and learning experiences. She noted areas for growth and thought carefully about how to address challenges tomorrow. She understood that personal development was continuous and that each day provided opportunities for progress and reflection. Throughout the night, she thought about her past and the journey she had undertaken. She considered the fear and oppression she had endured and the lessons she had learned from courage, patience, support. She felt gratitude for the guidance of the cowboy and for the community that had supported her along the way. She recognized that her strength was a combination of personal effort and meaningful support. She reviewed her goals and plans for the coming days. She considered new opportunities for learning, for helping others, and for personal growth. She felt calm confidence, knowing that she could navigate challenges and make choices aligned with her values and aspirations. Also spent time meditating and focusing on her inner state. She reflected on how fear had once controlled her and how courage had replaced it. She understood that vigilance and mindfulness were important to maintain freedom and independence. She practiced being present and aware and noted the ways this practice improved her. Clarity and resilience. The young woman understood the importance of balance in life. She balanced work, learning, support for others, rest, and reflection. She noticed how each component strengthened her freedom and capacity to act with courage and integrity. She realized that life was an ongoing practice of making choices that reflected her values and purpose. She considered the broader impact of her actions. She thought about how her growth and courage could influence others. She reflected on ways to mentor, support, and encourage people in her community. She realized that her experience could serve as a model and inspiration for others facing challenges. In fear, she organized her living space, carefully creating an environment that supported her daily routines and learning. She understood that physical surroundings affected mental clarity and emotional well-being. She maintained order and cleanliness, and felt satisfaction in creating a space that nurtured independence and focus throughout the day. She paid attention to her emotional and physical needs. She noticed tension and fatigue and took steps to alleviate them. She reminded herself that caring for oneself was an essential component of sustaining courage and freedom. She approached her day with intentionality and self-respect. Also reflected on lessons learned about relationships, trust, and support. She noted how healthy boundaries and consistent integrity were critical to meaningful connections. She considered how to apply these lessons in future interactions and felt confident in her ability to navigate relationships thoughtfully and effectively. The young woman ended the permanent day with gratitude. She reviewed her accomplishments in learning and appreciated the progress. And she considered the people who had supported her and the experiences that had built her courage. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment in the journey she had undertaken and the life she was creating. She prepared for rest with calm and focus. She understood that sleep was necessary for renewal and reflection. She took time to review goals and affirm intentions for the next day. She felt peace knowing that each day offered new opportunities for growth, learning, and courage. Her mind reflected on the journey from the ranch to her current life. She considered the fears she had faced, the lessons she had learned, and the courage she had built. She felt a sense of empowerment, knowing that freedom was now guided by her actions, choices, and understanding. She embraced the ongoing journey with determination and hope. Throughout the night she slept peacefully, knowing that her life was shaped by courage, patience, support, and careful action. She dreamt of new possibilities, opportunities for learning, helping others, and continuing to grow. She felt safe, strong, and capable, and understood that freedom was a daily practice of living with intention and integrity. When morning arrived, she rose again with calm energy, ready to continue the journey of learning, work, and personal growth. She reflected on the balance of independence, community, and self-care. She knew that each day offered opportunities to build courage, strengthen freedom, and act with thought and integrity. She moved forward with confidence, mindful of the lessons from the past and the possibilities of the